So UFC Fight Night Vettori versus Cannonier is going to be taking place this weekend, and this is my follow-up prediction video from my early prediction video, which I did in the weekend. And now I actually do have a lot more clarity on all of the fights. A couple of the fights I was on the fence. Now I do have a side to pick. Now it is worth noting as well, though, I actually am in the middle of my exams. I actually just had a maths exam on Monday. I've got a physics exam tomorrow, and then I've got another exam on Friday and the following Monday. So the next few videos, I'm going to still try and upload every single day, but they might be shorter. They might be maybe a little bit less thought out. They might be like pretty basic videos for my channel. So I'm going to try do every single day, but I am in the middle of my exams. So they might not be like what I really wanted to do, which is the best fighters from a country, because that takes a long time to research, because I've got to find fighters from lots of countries. I really wanted to do that video idea for a couple of other countries I thought of. It's just a bunch of little ideas that I kind of want to do, but I just don't have the time right now. But in about a week's time, I will have like all the free time in the world pretty much, so I'll definitely have more time to do that. Now you can sign up obviously with BetUS, 125% sign up bonus. And if you want all of the We Want Picks content, you can sign up with the premium there. And yes, I am wearing, I believe they're called a Snuggie in the USA, but they're like a blanket hoodie because it is not warm. Now let's get into the predictions. Modestas Bukauskas taking on Zach Pauga to start off the card. And I am going to be picking Modestas Bukauskas in this matchup. I do think he gets it done. I rewatched the Tyson Pedro fight, and although it wasn't really the best performance in the world, it was a short notice performance. Tyson Pedro gassed out, honestly, in like 4 minutes into the first round. It was kind of crazy, but Bukauskas won the second and the third round, arguably won the first round as well. So, in this fight, dude, Zach Pauga, before he was on The Ultimate Fighter, what he was doing was he was wrestling, and he's kind of stopped wrestling, you know. In his fight against Jordan Wright, I don't know how he did it, but he managed to make a Jordan Wright fight boring and go the distance. That is a feat in itself, to be honest. And in that fight as well, even though he was fighting at 205 pounds, despite fighting at heavyweight on The Ultimate Fighter and in the Ultimate Fighter finals against Muhammad Usman, he looked still somewhat small for 205 pounds, right? He almost looks like he could make 185. I've got Bukauskas in this fight. I like him stylistically as well. I think he's the better striker. He's going to be taller. He's got a little bit of a slight reach advantage, but I think he's going to use it better by keeping the range, by having very good kickboxing from the outside. I think he should be strong enough to keep Zach Pauga off him when he's against the cage, because that's what Zach Pauga seemingly wants to do. Clinch against the cage and just win on control like that. I don't think Bukauskas is going to let Pauga get away with that. I think Bukauskas either wins a decision, but I'm actually not really minding a potential knockout from the Bukauskas side to start off the night. Now we move on. You've got Ronnie Lawrence taking on Dan Argueta. Now, I am going to be picking Ronnie Lawrence in this matchup, and I'm seeing like a lot of people on YouTube wondering why Said Yokub Kakramonov was cut after he lost to Said Nurmagomedov. Now, a little bit of a insider scoop, I guess you could say. Alex Bahunian tweeted out saying that Said Yokub Kakramonov was cut from the UFC because he was being rude to backstage staff. Now, he didn't say he was being rude. He was pretty much saying he was being an asshole to backstage staff, and that's why Said Yokub Kakramonov has been cut from the UFC. I think he might be coming back. He tweeted out recently saying that he's got big news and that things will come around or something like that, and maybe he's back, but a lot of people are wondering why that happened. It wasn't really UFC just cutting him because he lost. There was a little bit going on in the background in that situation as well. But as to get to this fight, it's wrestler versus wrestler, and Ronnie Lawrence, man, this guy is very good wrestling in the ability that he takes people down over and over and over and over again. I believe he's averaging 7 takedowns per fight in his UFC run, which has lasted 4 fights, including that Dana White's Contender Series fight against Jose Johnson, who ended up in the UFC. But I think he missed weight and failed a USADA test, so he ended up getting cut. But I could be wrong on that. I do know he's been released from the promotion himself, though. But Daniel Argueta is also a good wrestler. I'm happy to see him at 135 pounds. I've wanted to see Dan Argueta at 135 pounds since he made that short notice fight against Damon Jackson. And then he took on Nick Aguirre, who took him on short notice at 145. And now we're finally getting Dan Argueta, which is where I think he's at his best, which is 135 pounds. I don't know if he can beat Ronnie Lawrence, though. It's going to be wrestler versus wrestler, and it could go either way. This is a very, very close fight, but I am going to go with Ronnie Lawrence. I think losing to Sadyokub Kakramonov isn't a bad thing at all. And he's taken a lot of time off. I can only assume that he's made lots of improvements since then. I think it's going to be a very, very wrestling-heavy fight, which Lawrence wins by decision. The next one is Tereza Bleda taking on Gabriela Fernandes, and I think that Tereza Bleda wins this fight. I'm actually quite confident in Tereza Bleda, and at minus 275, minus 250, I actually think that the line is almost justified, especially stylistically. This is a favorable matchup for her. Gabriela Fernandes is actually very dangerous on the feet. She can crack on the feet. I believe she landed a couple of good shots, even against Jasuda Vicious, who was able to take her down 4 times and control her a lot in that fight. Now, her takedown defense isn't that good. You know what I mean? Like, she's a good striker with bad takedown defense, but when she is on her back, she is dangerous. Off her back, she can threaten submissions, which can end up getting her being able to stand the fight back up. Now, Tereza Bleda is a wrestler. She wants to get on top and she wants to control. She's very, very good and heavy when she does get on top of people using that wrestling. Now, she did lose to Natalia Silva, which is a fight that she took on short notice and completely gassed out in. But she was having success in that fight. You know, I thought that she maybe won the first round, being able to take down Natalia Silva and control her in that fight. And before that, she's really been beating good levels of competition. You've got to consider for Tereza Bleda, she's only 21 years old. You know, she's going to be making improvements. I think that she really could maybe go on a good run at 125 pounds. And I do think it starts with a win over Gabriela Fernandes. This is a bad stylistic matchup for Gabriela Fernandes. I think Tereza Bleda is able to take her down, win a decision, maybe even win by ground and pound TKO, because she does have very good ground and pound. The next fight is Felipe Bunes taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I actually am going to be picking the underdog in Felipe Bunes. I'm seeing a lot of people picking Zhalgas Zhumagulov, but I think this is a good fight for Felipe Bunes. Now, I'm seeing people say stuff like, you know, he took Wesker Cruz to a split decision, and that's a bad look. These people didn't watch that fight. Felipe Bunes won all 3 rounds. Clearly, I've watched that fight 2 or 3 times now because I'm seeing this take over and over again that Felipe Bunes, he shouldn't have taken this guy Wesker Cruz to a split decision. That is probably, honestly, scoring that fight for Wesker Cruz is worse than probably any UFC decision that has ever happened. That is unreal. I've got absolutely no idea how a judge managed to give Wesker Cruz 2-1. There's an unreal scorecard. It really does shock me that that happened. But with Felipe Bunes, I just had to get that off my chest. Like, these people that are saying, like, they didn't watch the fight, dude. It wasn't a close fight. It was a domination from Bunes. Now, with that being said, I think Felipe Bunes wins this fight. On the feet, Bunes fights like a shoot box guy, but he doesn't train at shoot box. You know, he trains with a lot of really good fighters. Like, you see him going over to the USA with the Pitbull brothers. He's trained with John Jones in the past. He's trained with great fighters in the past, Henry Cejudo, all that sort of thing. But the way that he fights is like a Charles Oliveira type. Very aggressive Muay Thai, but it's not really like a traditional Muay Thai. It's just kind of aggressive kickboxing. He likes to throw a lot of spinning kicks. He likes to throw like a lot of kicks in general. And he's aggressive, you know. He doesn't, and he's primarily a grappler. But if you watch his fights, you wouldn't think that he's a grappler because he is very, very happy to keep the fight on the feet. Like, he's very content striking. In fact, he won't push the issue if he's having success on the feet like a lot of other grapplers potentially would. Now, he did mix everything up against Wesker Cruz. He knocked out Yuma Horiguchi in the first round, which is a fantastic win because Yuma Horiguchi is a great fighter. Maybe a little bit of a record that doesn't look too pretty, but Yuma Horiguchi, in my opinion, is a UFC level flyweight. Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he's 1-5 in the UFC with a lot of decisions that probably could have gone his way potentially, but I think Felipe Bunes, man, I think he's going to go out there and I think he's actually going to outland Zhalgas Zhumagulov on the feet. I think he's going to be the one pushing forward. I know Zhalgas Zhumagulov's entire game is pushing forward and pressuring forward, but Felipe Bunes, man, he's not going to be pushed backward, and if he is, he's going to be throwing like flying knees. He's going to be throwing big shots, heavy shots. He's going to be there to take out Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I know Zhumagulov's going to be pushing forward and trying to press the action, but Bunes is too. These guys might meet in the middle. Maybe Zhalgas Zhumagulov goes for takedowns, but if he does, Felipe Bunes, second degree black belt in BJJ, and he's legit. Felipe Bunes is a legitimate fighter. He's a good fighter. He's better than that record suggests. A lot of these fights as well, which he fought over in ACA, over in Russia, you really could say went his way. Like, there's definitely a couple of fights in there that he potentially did win. And as for Zhalgas Zhumagulov, you can actually say the opposite. Zhalgas Zhumagulov actually has a lot of wins early on prior to the UFC that you could argue probably shouldn't have gone his way. So kind of opposite situations. Now Zhalgas is in the UFC and he's getting robbed, but he robbed guys in the regional scene to get there. It's kind of all sorts of everywhere. But everyone's picking Zhumagulov. I've got Bunes. I think Bunes is very likely to even find a finish in this fight. I know Zhumagulov is notorious for having a good chin, not getting finished, but I can really see Bunes pushing the action and winning a decision, or maybe even finding a finish in the matchup. And now at flyweight, we've got Carlos Hernandez taking on Dennis Bondar, and I believe that these lines are really closing in, and I am on Dennis Bondar, and my confidence on Dennis Bondar has increased a little bit. This is stylistically a bad matchup for Carlos Hernandez, man. Like, Carlos Hernandez, really good amateur record. It's kind of what really put him on the map. You know, I believe he was at one point in his career an IMMAF world champion. He was in 2014. And he's actually got a win over Charles Johnson in the amateurs as well, which is actually really, really good win. Now, if you do go into his pro career, he lost his debut, and then he went on a crazy win streak, and I've made it pretty clear before. I think this guy is on a 3-fight losing streak, dude. I thought he lost to Daniel Barrios. I thought he lost to Victor Altamirano. And then he obviously lost to Alan Nascimento, dude. I don't know how he's getting these decisions, but I thought Daniel Barrios won that fight. I thought Victor Altamirano won that fight as well. And in these fights, he's just showing bad takedown defense. And Dennis Bondar is aggressive. This guy is going to try and take you down. He's just going to try and knock you out on the feet. But when he gets you down, this guy is submission over position always. He's trying to chase that finish. This guy's got 16 wins. He's got 16 finishes. He looked really bad in his debut, though, against Malcolm Gordon. Like, Malcolm Gordon was able to take him down. Malcolm Gordon was able to land a couple of good shots on the feet. The fight didn't last long, but all I'm going to say is it wasn't that good of a look for Bondar. But I think stylistically, this is a good matchup. He's obviously probably recovered from that injury now, which was a long time ago, over a year ago, and he's probably going to be hungry to get in there. I think he can go in there, and I think he can finish Carlos Hernandez by submission. I think this is a bad matchup for Hernandez. I think Hernandez even then is on a 3-fight losing streak. I don't think he deserved these 2 decisions that got him to the dance in the first place. I think Bondar goes out there and wins, but Bondar has not fought really the best competition, so it's going to be a good test to see how good Bondar really is. Now we move on to Kyung taking on Christian Quinonez. I've got Christian Quinonez in this matchup. Now, I am seeing some people picking Kyung. I can respect it, but I feel like you've got to go with Christian Quinonez, man. This guy's dangerous on the feet. He's a good boxer. He can wrestle if he has to. You know, when he took on Long Zhao, he was able to hurt Long Zhao on the feet and able to take Long Zhao down as well. And he defended a lot of takedowns from Long Zhao, because Long Zhao is a guy that will constantly push for takedowns. And then he knocked out Khalid Tahan. Khalid Tahan's a guy that was known for having a pretty decent chin. And he took that fight, I believe, on short notice, filling in for... Man, he was filling in for a French fighter that recently got re-signed to the UFC, but I can't remember his name. But the point is, Christian Quinonez kind of went out there and got a KO. As for Kyang, Kang's got a very interesting sort of style. And the reason why he's got that interesting sort of style is because sometimes he wrestles and sometimes he doesn't. I needed to know who it was. It was Taylor Netlapolis. Anyway, Kang, you know, like, he's had performances in the past where, like, he was trying to offensively wrestle against Ronnie Yaya. That didn't work. And then he was taking down other opponents in his career. And, like, Kang, sometimes he wrestles, sometimes he doesn't. And then he kind of come out there again out of nowhere and just outstruck Dinar Bakare in a fight which I don't believe he went for any takedowns in. And he won a fight on the feet. So it was very weird, interesting sort of performance from Kang. But I think Christian Quinonez can win this one. He's the up-and-coming prospect. I think with a win here, we'll put him on the Mexican card, which has been rumored for the end of the year for Mexican Independence Day. I believe it's sometime in September. But I think Christian Quinonez wins this, and then I think he goes on the Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2 card, which is, like, definitely going to happen in September. So give me Christian Quinonez in this fight. I wouldn't mind Quinonez by KO, but I do respect the fact that Kyung is a guy that can take damage and not get finished. Like, Teruto Ishihara was able to hit him with some good shots. It's a long time ago. He hasn't been active. Like, I know he had like, military service that he had to do, and then he got married and took some time off because of that. Like, he's been inactive, but it's because he's been living a life outside of MMA. So, You know, that does actually take like a kind of a lot of talent to be able to fight at the UFC level and still take time off, you know what I mean, to do other things. So, yeah, good for Kyung, but I think Quinonez beats him in this fight. Jimmy Flick taking on Alessandro Costa. As each day passes, the more and more confident I am in Alessandro Costa, man. I mean, low-key, like, this might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I think that Alessandro Costa should have been signed from that Dana White's Contender Series fight. Now, was it the best fight in the world? Maybe not, but he still did manage to drop Andres Luna Martinetti, and he did beat Andres Luna Martinetti, who has a 12-0 record at the time. You know, I know it was a little bit padded, but it's still a 12-0 record, and he did prove in that fight he was UFC level. And then he goes out there and knocks out Carlos Gomez within the opening seconds of the first round, and he earned himself a short notice fight against Amir Albazi. Now, that was a pretty tough fight for Alessandro Costa, but he went in there, and I thought he made a really good account for himself. He had absolutely nothing after the first rounds, but in the first round, you know, you could genuinely argue he won the fight. He outlanded Amir Albazi in that fight. You know, he showed really good boxing, and that's going to be a problem for Jimmy Flick in this fight. I think that Jimmy Flick is a great grappler, but man, like when he went out there against Charles Johnson, he didn't look very good. He looked hittable. He looked a little bit stiff on the feet, like he's throwing his kicks and all that, but he just didn't look that great. And now he's taking on a guy, an Alessandro Costa, who probably won't be too scared to grapple with Jimmy Flick. And on the feet, he's going to be there to try and like knock him out. He's going to be trying to take his head off on the feet, because when Alessandro Costa throws, he's throwing everything into those shots, man. Like Alessandro Costa, I'm not even joking, guys. I think Alessandro Costa genuinely has a chance of finishing this fight very quickly. He knocked out Carlos Gomez in 12 seconds. Jimmy Flick's hittable. I really would not be too surprised if Alessandro Costa goes out there, makes a read early, and knocks out Jimmy Flick very early into the first round, just with the way that Jimmy Flick fights, the way that Jimmy Flick is hittable on the feet, and the way that Alessandro Costa throws 110% into all of his shots. If Jimmy Flick wants to win this fight, it has to go to the grounds. And even then, Costa's a good grappler, you know. Costa can probably hang on the ground with Flick, but Flick, he does have wicked jiu-jitsu. Fantastic grappler is Jimmy Flick, but I just like Costa by KO in this fight. Costa's a grappler himself. You got to remember that. Like, Costa isn't just like a boxer. He is a grappler. Like, grappling is his base. A lot of people don't know that, but Costa's just a really good, powerful boxer. He's going to go out there. I think he's going to knock out Jimmy Flick probably in the first round. Raoni Barcelos taking on Miles Johns. Now, I'm going to be going with Raoni Barcelos here. My confidence has gone up, and I was right when I said against Miles Johns that he's a hard guy to get a good read on, because he is. And the reason why he's a hard guy to get a good read on is he's a wrestler that doesn't wrestle. You know, like Miles Johns, what got him to the dance was wrestling, and now that he's in the UFC, he's just not wrestling anymore, man. He's boxing, and when he's boxing, he's not really the most technical striker. He's not really the most high-volume striker in the world either. He just throws somewhat low volume, but when he throws, he's throwing power into the punches. And against a guy like Raoni Barcelos, I think Raoni Barcelos wins this fight. Barcelos, I believe he's like a Brazilian wrestling champion way back in the day. And he's also like a coral belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, he's really, really credited on the ground. He had a really bad performance against Victor Henry, which is just kind of unfortunate. And kind of since then, he just hasn't really looked that great. Like, he did beat Trevin Jones, but of course he beat Trevin Jones. And then he got knocked out by Umar Nurmagomedov, which is just kind of unfortunate, you know. In that fight, I know Umar was a massive favorite, but I did think that Raoni Barcelos was going to be a guy that could potentially test Umar Nurmagomedov in that fight, and obviously not. Umar just knocked him out brutally as well, but I like Barcelos in this fight, man. Miles Johns, if he wins this fight, it's going to be by knockout, and on the feet, Barcelos is no joke on the feet. Barcelos is a great grappler. He's a great wrestler. I think he mixes it all up to win the fight. I think he wins by decision against Miles Johns in this fight. And now we move on up the card. Muslim Salikhov taking on Nicolas Dalby. I think this is a fight to avoid, man. I really wouldn't bet this fight if I was anybody, but I am picking Muslim Salikhov in this matchup. He's an older guy. He's almost 40 now, but he is a really good striker, you know what I mean? He's got a good striking base. I don't even know if Kung Fu actually is his striking base. I think it's something to do like something like Wushu or something like that, but he does have a very good kickboxing striking base. You see him throwing a lot of kicks out there. He's a good striker. He's older, so he is slowing down a little bit, but he can wrestle and grapple himself, you know. He does actually kind of go for a surprisingly high amount of takedowns for a guy that I would describe as almost a pure striker in his base. But he has like gone for takedowns in the past, you know, against Andre Fialho, just beat him up. But like in a lot of these fights, he's taking people down like 2, 3, 4 times even at some points as well. Sometimes he wrestles, sometimes he doesn't. And Nicolas Dalby, he's an older guy himself, you know. Nicolas Dalby, he's a good striker. Sometimes he wrestles, sometimes he doesn't. He's also a guy that you can kind of get a hard, difficult read on. I believe I picked Wally Alves in that fight, and I can't remember what I thought of the decision at the time, but I just, you know, took Claudio Silva to a decision. Like, these aren't good looks, man. I've got Muslim Salikhov to win this fight by decision. He might even be able to get a knockout in this matchup, you know. I know Jesse Ronson went out there and hurt him and finished him, but Jesse Ronson was, I believe, not USADA approved in that matchup, to my knowledge anyway. But now we move on to Nicolas Motta taking on Manuel Torres. Fight of the night, 1-round fight of the night. This will be Manuel Torres. Man, I had a lot of fun researching this guy because he is a very exciting fighter. This guy, almost every single win is in the first round. You know, he doesn't really like to take fights the distance. Only one of his fights has gone the distance, and that was a fight which he won by split decision. All of his wins, aside from that, are first round finishes. And when this guy throws, man, he is throwing high volume and high power, high output, everything, man. He is going out there. He's trying to finish the fights in the first round. This guy does not have a boring style whatsoever. And the thing about Nicolas Motta is he low-key does the same thing. Maybe not the same thing exactly, but a very similar sort of thing. He's also aggressive on the feet. He's also aggressive just in general. He can get takedowns, but he can get taken down himself. You know, he's a good fighter. You know, he knocked out Cameron Van Camp, which was a pretty good win, pretty good KO there. And this is just going to be two guys that are going to be aggressive, that are going to be high volume. They're going to go out there and they're going to swing and bang. Like, this is going to be a fight of the night, 1-round fight of the night. Like, this is going to be fun. But I think Manuel Torres gets on top. I think he wins this fight by first round knockout. Maybe even like he gets this club and sub. Like, he does have a lot of submissions in his career, but Manuel Torres, man, what's getting him to the dance is him coming forward and getting crazy on the feet and finding the chin, or even just getting a takedown and getting a submission. But man, it's going to be, in my opinion, Manuel Torres finding an insane knockout in this fight, and a very fun fight that isn't going to last very long. And now we move on to Pat Sabatini versus Lucas Almeida. I don't like my pick here. I am picking Pat Sabatini, but I really don't like it because Lucas Almeida is a guy that can strike, and when he strikes, man, he lands with power, and he lands with some good shots. Like when he went out there and fought against Daniel Zhalgas, that first round, he was cracking Daniel Zhalgas with some fantastic shots, and Zhalgas was just eating them. Honestly, he was just eating those big shots that Lucas Almeida was going out there and landing on him. And then he, in fact, Dana White was so impressed with Lucas Almeida in a loss that he said, go out there and get one more win and we'll sign you to the UFC. So that's what he did. He went out there, he defended his jungle fight bout very soon after that fight on Dana White's Contender Series, submitted a guy that was 10-3, and then he got a good fight against Mike Trizano. You know, Mike Trizano hurt him early on. He come back with a third round finish. Lucas Almeida's going to be there, man. He's a tough guy, but the thing is, stylistically, this is a bad matchup for Almeida. But in a way, it's not, because Pat Sabatini, I'm really talking myself out of the Pat Sabatini pick, but I am picking Pat Sabatini. He's a wrestler and a grappler, and he's going to try and wrestle and grapple against Lucas Almeida here, but on the feet, he really needs to not waste time on the feet, because as I said in my last video, and a couple of you guys liked it, when you liked my quote here, but I said Pat Sabatini's performance on the feet was so bad against Damon Jackson, it gave Damon Jackson the confidence to go out there and have a pure striking game plan against Dan Ige. That's how bad that Pat Sabatini fight was, but even then, it wasn't even that bad. Like, he just got knocked out in the first round, you know, early into the first round, which just isn't a good look, but it did give Damon Jackson the confidence to go out there and strike against Dan Ige, and that's just not a good look when you're taking on a powerful striker. I've almost talked myself out of the pick, but I'm still going with Pat Sabatini. I think stylistically this is a good fight for him to get takedowns and grapple and maybe get a submission, but I don't like it. You shouldn't put it in a parlay. I don't think you should even bet it. If you're going to bet anything, maybe just bet Lucas Almeida by KO, but with that being said, we'll move on. Christian Leroy Duncan is taking on Arman Petrosian, and I like Christian Leroy Duncan a lot in this fight, man. This guy is a really, really good middleweight prospect. And this is something that you can't say about almost any middleweight on the roster. Both of these guys are technical on the feet. They genuinely do have good technique. And the way that Christian Leroy Duncan fights is actually very, very impressive at middleweight, because middleweight is notorious for just being a terrible division. Like, it just is. Like, welterweight and below, very high technique, high skill. Middleweight, for some reason, it's like this dead zone of fighters that just don't have technique. Like, Marvin Vettori has kind of got to the top of the division by being a sloppy boxer. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. But Christian Leroy Duncan and Arman Tsarukyan are both genuinely good strikers, and they are both very technical middleweights. Now, Christian Leroy Duncan, what I really like about him, and what we did get to see a little bit in his UFC debut, is just the way that this guy can kind of flow. You know, like when he was fighting Dusko Todorovic, everything he did was really smooth. He ended up with Dusko Todorovic getting injured, which was unfortunate for his debut, but he still got the win, he's still undefeated. But he just looked really good, you know, and he's got a really long reach advantage in this fight. He's throws up flying knees. He knocked out Jati Milan with one of those flying knees. He's just really good, and if he wants to, he can get a takedown in this fight, and maybe he does look to take down Arman Tsarukyan, because Arman Tsarukyan has a kickboxing background, but his takedown defense hasn't looked all that great in a lot of his previous fights. So maybe CLD could go out there and mix up the striking with the wrestling, and that wouldn't even be that bad of a game plan, honestly, because Christian Leroy Duncan, he's a great striker, but Arman Tsarukyan is too. And, you know, when you want to fight a guy like Arman Tsarukyan, who is a good striker, you do just kind of want to take the path of least resistance. So I like Christian Leroy Duncan in this fight. I really don't mind that KO prop. I understand I just said that he should potentially go for takedowns, but the KO is likely as well on the feet. The submission could happen. It's a good fight. It's a good fight to look forward to. And now Arman Tsarukyan is taking on Joaquim Silva. All of a sudden, everyone's kind of hating on this fight, and the reason why this fight is happening is Arman Tsarukyan just wants to fight, and nobody wants to fight him. Arman Tsarukyan was meant to fight against Renato Moicano in the main event of a fight night about a month or two ago, and nobody stepped in on short notice. Arman Tsarukyan was probably offered, like, all of the ranked opponents at lightweight were probably offered this Arman Tsarukyan fight, and they all turned it down, and Arman Tsarukyan probably just told the UFC, I will fight anybody. Find me literally anybody and I will fight them. And that's what they did. Joaquim Silva was the guy that said, yeah, give me the top 10 opponent in Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going to be the guy that will answer the call. And I don't think it goes that well for him, though. I mean, a lot of respect for Joaquim Silva. Like, Joaquim Silva is doing something that probably half of the roster, well, probably 90% of the UFC's lightweight roster wouldn't do, and that is fight Arman Tsarukyan. Like, a lot of these guys at the top of the lightweight division they're literally just running away from Arman. Like, nobody wants to fight Arman in this division, but I think Arman wins this fight. I think it kind of looks a little bit like the Yoel Alvarez fight, where Arman Tsarukyan just takes down Joaquim Silva and just ground and pounds him out. Probably in the first round is what I'm thinking, but Silva is dangerous. You know, is Silva dangerous enough to finish Tsarukyan as a massive underdog? In my opinion, no. But I like Tsarukyan in this matchup. You know, on the feet, Silva's decent, but if Silva's gonna win this fight, he has to get it done in the first round. Because I wouldn't even say Arman survives the first round. I'm always just saying, like, if Arman Tsarukyan can't finish Joaquim Silva in the first round, he's gonna do it in the second or the third. So that's kind of my breakdown for that fight, honestly. Maybe it's not a good breakdown, but we're talking about a minus 1,000 favorite here. That is justified at minus 1,000. So, yeah, I don't really know what else I'm meant to say. But now we move on to Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. This is the main event. I've got Marvin Vettori. I like this fight. Now, money's coming in on Jared Cannonier. I think Marvin Vettori is at even odds right now. Maybe he's even like a slight underdog, but I like Vettori in this fight. Now, the thing is, I've been very critical about Marvin Vettori in the past, because Marvin Vettori, to be honest with you guys, he has never impressed me. Marvin Vettori has never impressed me in any of his fights. Like, when I was watching him kind of rise up, before I even had a YouTube channel, I was watching this guy, and I was like, man, like, when this guy gets to the top, like, he's gonna lose. And was I wrong? Yeah, to be fair, I was a little bit, like this is before I even had a channel, but like Vettori's, I just don't rate him, dude. I even said earlier in the video, Vettori's made it to the top of the division with sloppy boxing, and he has. Vettori's boxing is terrible, and you could argue he lost to Roman Dolidze, and Roman Dolidze in that fight, his striking looked awful. Like when I say like it looked bad, Roman Dolidze was all he was doing this entire fight, and I'm surprised no one has brought it up yet, was just throwing an overhand right. He would throw, like sometimes he wouldn't even throw a jab, he just throw an overhand right, and at one point, I think it was in the second round, Roman Dolidze threw 14 overhand rights in a row with no variation in strike, nothing else. He was only throwing overhand rights over and over and over and over again, and it was landing every single time. I genuinely couldn't believe that Marvin Vettori wasn't able to make the read that the only strike that Roman Dolidze was trying to go for was the overhand right, and you just miss it, like sliver it and land a hook and knock him. Like I could not believe it. I could not believe that Marvin Vettori was unable to make the most simple read I think I've ever seen in an MMA fight, was that Roman Dolidze was constantly going for the overhand right over and over and over again, and Marvin Vettori never read it. He never made the read, oh, Dolidze's going for the overhand right, when he does this, he's open. Like, he never did it. I could not believe that fight. I could not believe how bad Vettori's striking was. It was unreal, and you can even then argue that he lost the fight, but on top of his horrible striking, Marvin Vettori's a good wrestler, but he just doesn't wrestle anymore, which is really confusing because he dominated Kevin Holland by just taking him down over and over and over and over again. And then when he fought Israel Adesanya, he used his sloppy boxing, which is what a lot of wrestlers do. They box because when you box, you naturally come in very close to your opponents, because when you're kicking from range. But when you box, like a lot of times to land a hook, you do have to be very, very close to your opponent. That's what a lot of these strikers do, a lot of these wrestlers do. They'll box to pressure forward, and then they can drop down easily because they're already close to their opponent. And that's what he kind of did against Izzy. That was his plan. It was actually pretty good. It was a good game plan to beat Israel Adesanya with his skill set, but he just couldn't pull it off because, as I said, he's literally terrible at striking. But then you beat Paulo Costa. Arguably, I thought Costa won that fight, but because Costa missed weight and pulled all those shenanigans, I just don't really care. But honestly, that was really tough on Vettori. But that's true, though. You watch that. Seriously, if you've got the time, or you're just curious, watch that Roman Dolidze fight and pay attention to Dolidze's overhand right. He's spamming it, and Vettori is never able to make the read. It's unreal. And as for Jared Cannonier, Jared Cannonier actually is a pretty good striker. I think Jared Cannonier, you can actually tell that Jared Cannonier actually is a decent striker. Now, when he did fight Israel Adesanya, it was a bad performance. It really was. But you could actually tell that Jared Cannonier had done his research. He was throwing the same combination that Alex Pereira knocked out Israel Adesanya with in the kickboxing days, with the left hook and whatever it was before it, over and over again himself, and he was landing it on occasion. So you could tell that although Jared Cannonier looked lost against Adesanya, he still made good reads in the fight. He still made good adjustments. He still did his research before, found out what worked, what didn't. I can guarantee you this: Jared Cannonier is not just going to run forward in front of Marvin Vettori and spam overhand rights over and over again and just pray that one lands. So it's going to be interesting, but I think Jared Cannonier on the feet can get it done, but in the decision, because I don't think Vettori is going to get knocked out for a long time. This guy's just got unreal chin, unreal ability to absorb damage. I'm picking Vettori, though, because I'm trusting him to be able to mix up the wrestling with the striking, which is something that he hasn't done for a very long time. But another thing that hasn't been done for a very long time is Jared Cannonier hasn't fought a guy that's going to actively try and take him down in a while. The last time he did that was against Derek Brunson, but he just fought Israel Adesanya about a year ago, and then he fought Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland, although he's got a good wrestling base, just doesn't like to take people down himself. So it's interesting, right? But like when Derek Brunson fought him, he was able to take down Jared Cannonier in that fight before he got KO'd. So I'm picking Marvin Vettori to mix the striking in with the wrestling. But the thing is with Marvin Vettori is he is dumb. Like he just is dumb. He can't make reads in fights, and the most basic read that was open and ready for him against Roman Dolidze which was so blatantly obvious. He just couldn't counter, man. Like, Roman Dolidze was throwing this overhand right, and every time you throw an overhand right, you leave a big part of yourself exposed. Like, Marvin Vettori really could have stepped to the side, thrown a hook, maybe even just thrown something straight down the pipe, because throwing a straight punch will beat the overhand right, which Dolidze wasn't even hiding. He was pumping it back and then throwing it. Oh my god, I just can't believe it. But yeah, I'm picking Vettori by decision to mix up the striking with the wrestling. Let me know if you've also made that read on the Vettori-Dolidze fight, because I just could not believe what I was seeing when I was watching the fight. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.